Gentlemen, I'm set.
Okay, it's a pleasure once more, KTV. As our movie states, we are everywhere currently. We are in Chairman Single, and we have a conversation with political leader of the MPC, Honorable Simeon Freeman. So welcome to KTV Live.
Thank you, gentlemen, and it's a pleasure to be in your company. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for to say hello to your audience in internet land.
It's good that we can have you, especially at this time. Not until lately, we spoke on talking to the media until that event of big quiet. Not until lately that we spoke with the media. But before that, we'd like to get your own general view about the fight against the COVID-19 crisis in Nigeria. What's your own general?
Well, I firstly want to thank the government for. I want to thank the government for the initiatives taken so far. But I think there are lots and lots of loopholes and weaknesses in the fight. You can see the Ministry of Health emergency was quite comprehensive. It made definitions, churches closed, mosques closed, bars closed. It also indicated how many persons can attend a burial and or go to the supermarket, how many persons can. It was quite thorough. It enforced this whole concept as advised by the WHO, practiced by China and other successful countries against the fight, social distancing. It's extremely important that those things are upheld. But before coming here, you saw the streets. Everybody's touching everybody. Everybody's doing whatever. The very things that we are not supposed to be doing, we're doing them. And then by 3 o'clock, in a very difficult situation, it's like you flooding water through a small pipe. You have a 2-inch pipe and you flood in 4-inch or 5-inch water through it. So our broken down roads and small roads, you can see the traffic is heavy to move from point A to B because everybody is trying to cram within a 3 o'clock deadline for fear of being whipped or in any way violated. So I think that the strategy itself is a problem. And I think there is a lot more we can do and do it better to get the results that we want. And apparently we may not be doing that. But the approaches are good, but they can be further enhanced.
So what could be some of the own recommendations?
Like I've said in the press conference, it's extremely important that we take into consideration the socio-economic infrastructure of Liberia. People live from hand to mouth. So I think we need to do this thing district by district, put 2 districts together. It's my understanding it takes up to 3-4 days to get a test result back. I'm not sure if that is true. I stand to be corrected. It could either be 3 days, 2 days, whatever. That means if you were to notify a district and give them 4 days, 5 days notification that there will be a complete shutdown in this district for the next 5 days. During that period, the 6,000 or 15,000 strong men that they had just deploy in the district and go from house to house to take swab samples. Results come back. If out of 50,000, 100,000 people, say 5,000 have it or 2,000 have it, you remove them, you extract them, and then you lift the lockdown in such a district. But that means you can only navigate within the 2 districts that have been cleared and then move on to 2 other districts. It has to be district by district. The way you're doing it and then giving the freedom for people to navigate easily during the day, I think it creates more complication. The other challenge we have is we have not seen the government showcase any serious facility. Let's say about 10,000 Liberians are affected. Where are they going to be housed? Where are they going to be stored? Where are they going to be kept? What's the bedding capacity of JFK? It means you're going to shut JFK down and turn it into a coronavirus hospital. What's going to happen with malaria, typhoid, pressure, diabetes, all of the other issues that people have that they need to see a doctor daily? What's going to happen with that? During the Ebola time, we saw temporary facilities being, erected. How do you call it? ETUs being erected in different areas. Can we go back to those structures and set it up in preparation for an onslaught? But it doesn't make sense to just shut down without the associated action. In essence, you basically ripping up your own economy, depriving people of livelihood, when in fact you're really not fighting a thing. You created an opportunity for the thing to spread, and you say you're fighting it. And I think that's where we see the lack of the lack of coordination between the political effort and the health effort. You can clearly see that the health professionals are being ignored, whereas during Ebola, you could see the health professionals were being obeyed and listened to. You can see the huge disconnect.
The president has called on Liberians generally, whether from any political background or whatever, to come together and help, because this is a national crisis. What has been your own involvement from the political?
Well, it's quite open. If you want people to help, you have to put in place a structure. You have to say, okay, look, political parties, we are naming the following political parties, or we name this vehicle to call on political infrastructure so that we can be able to set up a way in which other ideas can be solicited, or finances can be solicited, or other types of assistance can be solicited. But to just throw a blanket political call out there like you, the press union president, just jump out and say, we're calling all media institutions to do this. You don't see a connection. The connection will come from setting up the structure so that people are not lost. Because it's easier to name a person, you call that person, and then you can reach the person. So I think if the structure is set up, well, I come from the private sector, things has to be coordinated, not just throw up political statements because you want to clear the law that you say something. So I don't see any structure. I don't see anything. But from our standpoint as a political party, we've been reaching out to different communities, which in every respect is not significant or sufficient, because the bulk of the money is held by the government, and there needs to be a coordinated effort to try to isolate this issue.
Since the commencement of the virus in Liberia, since the president announced it on the 16th of March up to the present, we've seen an increase in the number of cases, confirmed cases. What do you think is actually, though you're not a health practitioner, but then following?
No health practitioner knows about the new coronavirus. The coronaviruses have been around all along. They come from the same family as SARS, MERS. So you can read about it online even if you know. But what is specifically different about this virus, and that's why no medical professional can tell you this is this. There's a lot of argument. In the first time they said, it lays for about 24 hours on metal surfaces. So if you have it or somebody has it, let me know it's signed that to you, touches that door. You and I come in and touch the door handle. That's why you see we're not closing our doors here, we're just leaving them open. It's transmitted. Then now it's established from additional studies, 4 days the virus lives on this surface. Plastic surfaces up to 3 days. Cardboard, so if you touch this paper, I touch this paper, there's a probability that I could get it. So this virus is totally different, and it exploits our way of life. We touch our face 50 to 100, some people say 300 times a day. Every minute you're touching your face or your nose or your eyes or something, and it uses that as a conduit. Your hand uses it to enter your body. So obviously, from what has been established in China, if one person have it, in the 10th generation of that one person, in terms of reinfections, one person can infect up to 3,000 persons. And that's why you notice there has been a consistent effort by foreign governments to take the people out of Africa. Not just Liberia, all over Africa, foreign Western governments are taking the people out. And we've been joking and saying, but they have it more than ours. And they are saying, you're not testing. So you could probably have it more than them. But because you're not testing, you don't know. And so far, it's the same thing we're saying. How many test kits do we have? How many test kits have we procured? How many test kits are we willing to procure? What kind of financial allotment have we attributed towards procuring test kits and or erecting these structures that was erecting, what you call it, the EPU or ETU, that was erected during the Ebola time to assist or to deal with emerging a number of new cases. We don't have those in place. So if we had up to, say, 6,000 cases, it's going to overwhelm our already crippled health sector. So they're taking the people out. That's why we're saying we need to be systematic, we need to be organized and see how we can deal with this thing quickly through a more district type approach rather than just this broad go home. So basically you're saying, Corona travels at 3 o'clock. It's like a mosquito, it comes out at 3. Only at 3 we don't want it to bite you, so we're going to beat you for your own code. I think it's a totally wrong approach that does not jive with the information available about Corona.
Taking it back to the issue of involvement, if court directly, including other opposition political individuals and institutions, called directly to help in the fight, will you be willing to?
We're more than willing to assist the national call. We're more than willing to help. It's about Liberia. Like I said, outside Liberia, you've been traveling before, I'm sure. Your passport does not have Sino on it. The passport has Liberia. Sure. My passport would never carry Grand Bassa or Bong or whatever, or Maryland is going to carry Liberia. If we are condemned, we will be condemned as one unit, Liberians. So in every respect, we will be more than happy to assist the process of creating some kind of stabilization for our country.
Of late, the Solicitor General, this is something the media, quote unquote, threatening the media with fake news, the data will be seized, the institution will be shut down. What do you make of such things?
I think the Solicitor General misspoke, and I'm sure if you were to speak with him again, he may probably reconsider. I know Councillor Cephas very well. I want to suspect he misspoke because a state of emergency suspends certain rights, and the rights that are suspended are clearly stated. Rights regarding freedom of movement, and the reason why freedom of movement is curtailed is because the virus spread through human interaction. Freedom of expression does not affect the virus. What he's speaking about is freedom of expression. Now, if a media institution were to say something that they don't have evidence for, our law provides for libel. You go to court to prove that. You don't physically seize. To physically seize is an assault. And so that media institution can sue you irrespective of who you are. So that's why I'm saying he misspoke as a lawyer. And I think he probably may have reconsidered his utterances, or he probably may be thinking about that. But the state of emergency, a state of emergency is intended for certain rights to be suspended. But those rights that are suspended will clearly be identified as the following rights are suspended. And that's why we said, hey, they need to be more clear. But even in the president's speech, a state of emergency does not affect freedom of speech. Fake news, you firstly have to identify the institution. Mr. Konto is alive. Somebody said Mr. Konto is dead. It's fake news. You can sue for libel. Our law provides for that. It does not provide any infrastructure where you go and seize. That is possible when you have a military government that is ruling by decree. We're not ruling by decree. The Constitution has not been suspended. So he clearly misspoke. He's a fine gentleman, and I'm sure if you were to engage him again, he will come back to try to clarify that.
Last time you had a press conference, among other things, you threatened the issue of going to court. To give you the opportunity to restate why and how far this is not a consideration.
Well, yeah, the lawyers are working on the documentation. Hopefully next week, we should be able to reach the courthouse. So that's where we are in terms of the documentation. Basically, we were looking at the procedural dynamics that were violated by the executive and the legislature. What gave rise to all of this is a potential threat, and that potential threat is corona. There's a difference between what is potential and what is imminent. An imminent threat is, okay, look, 10,000 Liberians are dropping in the streets every day and dying. That's a potential, that's an imminent threat. You have the danger upon you. You don't know how many more people could be hurt. In this case, nobody have dropped in the street and died. In this case, even people are surviving. You know, some countries have a better ratio. Some countries like Russia have less than 1% death rate. Some other countries have 1. Some countries have up to 5. Some countries have up to 12% death rate. So the health emergency, this potential threat gave rise to this. We are saying the president's document told the legislature ignore the health provisions which gave rise to this. So just say people are quarantined for food, you can get out, and for essential, what is essential? If church is essential for me, then that's it. It doesn't talk about social distancing. So it means that this whole health emergency, which gave rise to the state of emergency, is clearly missing all of the key components and issues above. And so we want to have that totally corrected so that we know what rights are suspended. So when somebody's church is closed, they know it's closed for a reason, because right now there's a confusion between the health emergency, which lapsed April 11 for 21 days, and the executive proclamation, which of course components thereof was last by the because it started on the 10th. By the 24th he renewed it, but by renewing it is out of what the legislature also concur with. So we want to structure all of these things. The second thing we want to structure is the issue of rice. You said $25 million for rice. There's a health emergency, so you don't deal with the issue of setting up ETUs. You don't deal with the issue of provision of drugs. You say people cannot afford, they're hungry and this and that, but if those people have been surviving by themselves, then what those people need are drugs. They say chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, remdesivir. These drugs have been curing this thing. In other countries, how many of those are we going to procure for our poor people that cannot afford help? How many ETUs do we have? How many are we going to procure? Those are things that John resolution is supposed to take, because this is a health emergency. If we were attacked by Sierra Leone, we would be saying X amount of money given towards war to the Ministry of Defense. How much money is allotted in that John resolution for the Ministry of Health? To fight what? You talk to the Ministry of Health, they don't have anything. Oxygen, they don't have. They don't have ventilators, they don't have. So, but then you take $25 million and you throw it in a hole. And why we call it a hole is because the last time we did census in this country was 2008. It took us almost a year or two to do a census, because every house had to be marked, people had to be checked. $25 million, how can you determine who got what bag of rice? How can you determine which house, what bag, how many bags of rice was given to? Is that not a black hole? That's a hole, a clear basis for corruption. The Constitution, Article 6 and 7 clearly states you can segregate. You must provide health equitably for all. You must provide prosperity equitably for all. You come and say, okay, the market women and the small businesses that borrow loan from the bank, you're going to write it all. The first thing is, who is a market woman? No definition. Who is a small business? No definition. What limit of money one has to own, or what size of business for you to be called a small business? The reason why these things are important, tomorrow they will start to write off their own debts that they took from the bank in the name of small business. Besides that, what if they come with a $75 million bill and say, this is the bill they wrote off on the commercial banks? What happened with you who have your small business and you didn't take loan? So you are disadvantaged because you are not reckless in borrowing? So the truth is, you don't need that. What you can do, you can say, look, those who have borrowed loan, we give you a moratorium. The central bank can work with the commercial bank and give a moratorium, meaning 90 days you can't pay because your business is not open. And then come up with an amount and say, we will do a listing of small businesses, and afterwards, we give say $10 million to the central bank. The central bank will loan it to commercial banks to make it available to small businesses that need to borrow loan to restart. If you have a restaurant and during this period you ate your principal because you're home, you might probably need money to start. So you can go to the bank honor a legitimate process because the banks will be paying back that money. You have an environment of control. Right now, you don't. And we're saying all of these things are significant issues that needs to be addressed before we start to give corruption wings and let corruption begin to look the way it looks. So when our legislators pass a document, it has to be structural. The third thing has to do with the 6005 that each of them talking about. Everybody seems to have a different opinion about the 6005. They are saying operational fund. Let's assume it's operational fund. What the senators are missing, if the senators or the House of Representatives wants operational money that is allocated in the national budget to be given to them, they must pass that law and say operational fund will be for us. KMTV is an institution. The Constitution says the money you are entitled to, you're entitled to that money and nothing more for the services rendered. If they give you $15,000 plus change, which is what they make, I think 15,500 thereabout, categorized into salary, health, transportation, those things, in the budget is clearly indicated as money for them. The operational money, 1.something million, it's not for them. It's for the operation of the Senate. Papers, gasoline, stationery, whatever else, that needs to be done, small, whatever that needs to be done for different offices. It was never intended to be given to them individually. That's wrong. First thing is against the budget law of Liberia. We have something called a budget law of Liberia that they may probably not be aware of. It's against the constitutional provision. That's why we're saying, give the money back. If they want,
if not,
but all of those things are in our pleading to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
If they want the money to be there, they have the right to pass their own law. They will pass in their law and amend that portion of the budget law that gives them the autonomy. Like you see, the judiciary has a financial autonomy. So the judiciary can make its own provision and say operational fund will be done like this. If they don't do that, if there is no law supporting that, whether it's a practice that has been done before, that doesn't make the practice right. And that's why we're saying it is wrong.
Okay, before we wrap up, any comments that this is?
Yeah, I want to encourage the government. Many times when you speak, you seem from a standpoint that, this man is against us. Here we don't have left and right. We have differences of approaches. Let's go to Sino. Mr. Konto said, let's go through Ganta. I said, no, let's go through Riverses. We have two different approaches. It doesn't mean you are against me, I'm against you. I think the mindset in our part of the world is once there is an alternative view, an alternative mindset, then the reception to such an alternative mindset is, that man is opposition, the man against us. In this small country called Liberia, if we don't work together and share ideas on how we can drive our country forward, we're going to have a problem. For example, when we were building all of these roads in different communities, Pastor, I live across the bridge. The road from across the bridge from Douala, down to Vita, it's a mess. That's the major road that transports all your container, that you have the LPRC there, you have the port there, you have all of the major businesses across the bridge. That's the road they plow on. You don't touch it. That is going to increase revenue. If cars stay on a road for 2 hours just to pass through that belt, it impacts revenue. You say you have revenue problem. When somebody talk about it, then you say, this person is against us. We need to embrace ideas, open it up to understand that because we are in power, because we were voted by the people, it is not averted by the people to say you have autonomy over idea, that you're the smartest guy. No. The people are saying, we are putting you there to be the mixing bowl, to bring everybody else so that we can drive a developed process. Me, as a Liberian, when foreigners come to this country and see nice buildings, you see this building we're building, spending lots of money. If it goes up, finishes, it's going to beautify this Fiama. Many other people that are Liberians are not doing this kind of thing. If we can create that environment for this to happen, like you go to Nigeria, you go to other countries, you see beautiful infrastructure well set up, we develop our country. The person that takes the glory will be the president that was in power at the time. That's why that president needs to open his mind and embrace everybody else from the standpoint of the constructive engagement rather than seeing it from the standpoint of, oh, these people are opposition. I think that's destructive, and that's what hurt past presidents.
Thank you so much for that information.
Pleasure talking to you guys.
That's Honorable Simeon Freeman, who is the political leader of the movement for progressive change. Many thanks for following us, and please keep watching KTV because we are everywhere. Bye-bye.